Today, we're looking at a blue-black ink from Callifolio Baikal. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that if you want to skip around, you can, but if you got the time, check out the entire video. You can follow me over on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Pilot vanishing point with a medium nib, use it to write for a day, and to take my notes for this video. In order to standardize, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in this first writing sample. There will be more writing samples on different papers later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it comes in a tube, something like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, some nice shading throughout. T and the is lighter than the rest of the word. The Q and the K in quick is darker. Fox starts dark, gets light, gets dark. Over starts light, gets dark. Lazy starts dark, gets light. It's very nice, and 10 seconds to dry. Now, medium is darker than the extra fine, just a hair lighter than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some shading spots, like Fox starts light and gets dark. Brown starts dark and gets light. Quick starts dark, gets light at the C, but dark back into the K again. So it does some nice shading through the writing, and 14 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine and the medium both don't show a ton of color variation, not very much at all, but it comes through better in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some decent shading, like the Q and K and quick are both darker. Brown starts dark and gets light. Lazy starts dark and gets light. Over starts lighter and gets slightly darker at the R, so it is there even on Tomoe River in the writing. 16 seconds to dry. Medium, darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 23 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both doesn't show a lot of color variation, although it does show up in the extra fine. And Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, nice shading throughout, like the K in quick is much darker, the T and the is much lighter, brown starts darker, works its way lighter, Fox starts lighter, works its way darker, over goes from light to dark. Nice, 11 seconds to dry. Medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine and just a little bit lighter than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine, left to right, shows us some decent color variation, and we got it. The medium shows none, and we got none. I agree with Vita that we learn a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see here is a nice blue that works its way up and a line of black across the top. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And let me back up. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately dunk it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a nice blue that pushes its way up, a darker blue, and a line of black across the top of it. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And that blue line across the bottom, much darker, much more there, really showing that it's probably going to have a little bit of resistance with it. And that black line across the top, still there. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles itself very well. It is safe to use in a note-taking situation for those that want to go back and highlight. water is really moving a lot of this ink around. Now, if you look at the right side of that water dot, you start to see some of the white of the paper coming through, which makes me say that quite possibly water is all that you need to get this out of your pen, because it is breaking it up. And that's just a drop sitting on the ink for only 30 seconds. Pen flush does everything that water does, and it does it a little bit better. You really start to see the white of the paper start coming through, but I don't think you're going to need flush to get this out of your pen. Speaking of not needing, 1/3 bleach solution. It does completely obliterate it, but there's no need for it to clean this from your pen. I test for viscosity or flow using a thing called a tilt test. I will link how I do that, the video of it, down below or up in the cards. I also then put it onto a standard distribution so it's more easily seen with all of the inks that I've tested. Now, for the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Callifolio's Baikal has a viscosity of 1.88. making this a wetter ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Callifolio's Baikal has an average dry time of 15 seconds, making it normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Callifolio's Baikal, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted to go with a nice pink leaning ink and chose Krishna's Mandara. The second writing sample is done on P. Berger, Levinger, and Strathmore writing paper. This is P. Berger paper. It's a French rules student grade paper. It does have a lot of bleed spots that have issues with the stub, some spots that are coming through with the medium, spots that are starting to come through with the extra fine, but it doesn't touch the page underneath, and it's got a fair amount of ghosting. The use of the back of the page is going to be much more user discretion thing here. I think if you're not super picky, you could. Now, the 1.1 has a ton of feathering. A ton of feathering. It's not the end of the world if you're talking about just practicing certain things, but I wouldn't want this. It's gross. The KAL is absolutely horrible with the feather. It's got no spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 4 seconds to dry. It's performing very nicely. Medium is about the same tone as the stub. Medium has minor feathering in all, in a lot of spots, not all of its spots, a lot of spots. The K in quick, the word lazy, the R in brown. There's plenty of feathering spots, but they're not so bad that it distracts from reading it. It's got no spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, and we didn't get it. Levinger. No bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo, sheen, but it does offer some very nice shading. Over goes from light to dark. Quick goes from dark to light to dark. Brown starts darker, works lighter. Not very dark, but it's a darker tone and a lighter tone, so there is some nice shading through the writing. And 6 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the 1.1, which is darker than the stub, with no feather spread, halo, sheen, and no real shading. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, although we do get some with the extra fine. Last up is Strathmore writing paper. We get no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 4 seconds to dry. Now the medium is darker than the extra fine, but just a little bit lighter than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any color variation. That is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Callifolio Baikal? There's a slight purple lean in this blue-black ink, which is a very interesting character that it gives. I do find it nice on the page, and when it gives that hint of shading, it is truly very nice to look at. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I found that a dry fine or medium flow medium nib gave me enough color, but still allowed the ink to give a little bit of shading on the page. If you've enjoyed this video, remember, I like thumbs up, you like thumbs up, everybody likes thumbs up. Unless you didn't like it, then give me the thumbs down. Both are good. Thanks for watching.